Schools was easy, huh? I don't think so.
The Dan Yorke State of Mind program is brought to you in part by Lookout Rhode Island and Takeo Comfort Solutions.
So welcome aboard. Great to have you in. Thanks very much for tuning in. FYI, timing-wise, just making sure that you know that we tape this program on Thursday mid-afternoons around 1:30, and you're seeing it on Friday night on Fox and Sunday night on WPRI 12. And it's important that I just tell you those things because it's so fluid. You know, the entire news cycle is so fluid. So if anything changes a little bit, blame the production schedule. But look, tomorrow for our taping, tonight as you're seeing, is day one of the deadline for the vaccine mandate. And couple that social news pressure, health pressure on everybody, now the schools are kicking up. Pinch me, I'm shocked. This is something that we had to know. To be honest with you, as I've opined on both the TV and radio platforms, notwithstanding the incredible work that Governor McKee and his team have done with vaccination on a general population basis, I am very, 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 very disappointed with the rollout on a school and the testing level and this concept of test and stay, which to the governor's credit, he's jumped on this week. We're going to talk more about that with my guest coming up, who I don't know what his perspective is on that part of the conversation, but the superintendent of Coventry Schools is a straight shooter and somebody whose gut I can trust. And may teach me a couple of things here. In the meantime, speaking of the governor, headline here, the McKee administration wants businesses to get more dough. Now remember, during the intense COVID time period when we were on complete executive order, McKee, as lieutenant governor, was really getting on Governor Raimondo at the time for more money into the small businesses, and he earned major credits from the small business community for that. Now that he is governor, earning that job through step-up inheritance under our state statutes and Constitution, he is once again trying to get at least $50 million into the small business community. And the difference now is that much like the federal government, you know, our civics lessons should be intact here. And by the way, the federal government hopefully is drawing closer and closer to a budget and debt ceiling deal, right? Last thing we need is that chaos. Our General Assembly is at least statutorily fully back to work. That doesn't mean they're working. It just means they're fully retaining authorization on expenditures. And what that means is that unlike executive order days when Gina Raimondo can say, hey, 20 million here, hey, 40 million there, scratch an itch, 5 million there, this governor's got to get everything to the General Assembly, which this is television, and I'm not going to insult you and be disgusting, but it has its finger squarely up its own nose right now, this General Assembly, as they wait and wait and wait, and then pick on the governor for not being more specific about a plan from which they can actually have a hearing or two. They'll run in to review his education consultancy deal, which they're trying to find as corrupt, maybe sloppy, it's not corrupt, but we can't get him back into work. And so we shall see. We shall see. In the meantime, we got $1.1 billion of COVID money sitting there. And I think there's a lot of things we can do with that money. And I'll talk to the superintendent about a couple of things that he might think we could do with that money. In the meantime, the nurses are challenging the vaccine in court, and it ain't going to happen, right? These are swings and misses. This one is on religious exemption in Rhode Island. It's the second court case that we have here that will probably go south. Firefighters tried earlier in the week. And made some salient arguments, I think. But no judge is going to push against health officials in times of a health crisis, pandemic. Maybe when we get to endemic level, there'll be some difference, but judges don't want to be responsible for medicine. It's as simple as that. the constitutionality of these things is important, but health and safety of the general population is something the judges will lean on as constitutionally more perfect than the arguments that are made. In the meantime, this headline is unique from earlier in the week. Nurses blame the hospitals for shortages. So why they're saying, this is the nurses union that says, you know what, we support the vaccine, we don't support the few nurses who are suing over the vaccine, but let's take this opportunity to beat the living tar out of the hospital companies for not investing enough money in total operations. Deft, I thought. Very interesting. Good play, as they say. So there's that. All right. In the meantime, I'm going to show you the story in depth in Coventry here in just a second, but here's a little snippet of the superintendent's, direct response to this.
There's a lot of variables to this. We just want to make sure that we're doing the best we can and we're communicating as effectively as we can.
And it is about communication. Superintendent Levin, correct?
Correct. Correct.
The Levis. Did I say Levis? I've got another gentleman on my mind. Craig and I certainly know each other. We've done shows before. I have a lot of respect for his no-nonsense approach to this whole situation. So good to see you. You feeling well? You've been able to this is something everybody asks in COVID. You've been okay? No major traumas?
No major. Yeah. I mean, like everybody else, it's a day at a time.
Yeah. Yeah. And you don't get cocky about this whole thing. Let's go backwards first. How was last year into this year? I know we had a conversation or two about that already, but
I think our saving grace has been all along is to keep the focus on what's in the best interest of students. And we ended last year with an outdoor graduation, 2,500 individuals. It was an amazing celebration. And again, I think that by keeping the focus on students and trying to get back to as much normalcy as possible, we ended the year in an extremely positive way.
You did some interesting things during the school year, I remember, in terms of just trying to get to the end.
Yeah, I mean, I think what it's been for us is, and I say this all the time, we've never just said this is good as it gets, like this is the plan. We've constantly been able to step back and reflect, take all the information that's coming to us, and again, go back with that lens of how's this impacting students, how's this impacting families, how does this impact staff? And so we've made the modifications throughout. And again, this year we hit fast and furious, and we're using the same approach. It's working together, not pointing the finger, but working together that's gotten us to where we are.
All right, when we come back, we'll kind of lay out the current situation and dig into it. Stay with us.
We weren't expecting to come back and to deal with this Delta variant the way we have.
After an increase in positive COVID cases, Coventry High School is taking steps to try to mitigate the problem, going virtual Monday and Tuesday, with Wednesday being a professional development day. Starting Thursday, students will be in person the first half of the day and learn from home the second half. Superintendent Craig Levis says the half-days will start at lunchtime to avoid crowding in the school's cafeterias. 1,500
students in our two lunchrooms divided by 3 lunches, so there's a significant amount. They're shoulder to shoulder.
He says it's impossible to make sure all students put their masks back on after each bite, and that half-days will stay in place until COVID numbers improve. 37 positive cases since the start of the year.
This isn't going to be forever.
He says that most everyone in his district's high school is eligible to be vaccinated, but not everyone has taken advantage of the shot.
55% of them are vaccinated, which means 45% aren't. So those individuals, if they were identified as a close contact, will need to be quarantined.
Superintendent Levis says that the new schedule allows high school students to be in school for as long as possible and as safely as possible, but that his recent meetings with the Rhode Island Department of Health have shown that in-person learning is about to get more difficult.
The next couple of months are going to be challenging. We're going to start going indoors more. I'm going to get cooler.
Right. So that lays the groundwork. Before I ask you about this specific challenge that you have, look at those kids with the masks on outside of the school and everything else. I live nearby Cumberland High School, right? So I see them on a pretty regular basis. I have mixed feelings about it. It kind of breaks my heart a little bit. At the same time, they seem pretty resilient about it. There's a lot of hand-wringing that goes on the radio program. And there are a lot of people, parents who can't get over it, while their kids seem to be pretty resilient about it. Am I reading this correctly?
Yeah, I believe that most students, I mean, I don't want to wear a mask. You know, I wish I could go back and just not have to think about where I am, what am I doing with my hands. But it's our reality. And one of our school committee members had asked, like, you know, like, we need to see normalcy. And I'm going to tell you that if you go into our schools, other than the masks, it's a normal situation. You know, kids are being kids, teachers are being, you know, in the classroom, enjoying the engagement with students. So I think it's a small price to pay, and it's not forever.
Right. But what are you saying to the parent that I haven't seen any news where there's been you know, people standing on their heads in front of the Coventry School Board? I'm sure they have. It's been happening all over the place, and threats, litigation, and all that kind of thing. What do you say to the parents, especially the little ones, who say that they're so traumatized by, the kids are so traumatized by these masks that this is something that they'll never be able to forget or get over? What's your practical thought about that?
Well, a couple of things. I'm not going to tell people how to feel. Parents feel the way they feel. You and I feel the way we feel. So that's the first point. Secondly is that I'm not a scientist. I'm not a doctor. But we have credible guidance from the Department of Health. There's been studies from the CDC. And so as superintendent, my role is to make sure that, you know, we're doing what we need to do to ensure the safety. Again, there's no evidence that that's really happening, but people will present studies. We prioritize social emotional well-being for students and staff in our schools. So we're always looking at how can we support students and their mental health and our staff and their mental well-being.
Well, the social mental health well-being is something we talked about all last year, which means we needed to get them back in, because that was a solution to the social mental well-being. So we got them in. The masks are not fun, but it's not as if it's, I mean, at this point, it's hardly traumatic. We see them all the time. Right?
Right.
So, and when they come off,
right,
they'll be okay.
And we try to instill opportunities and breaks. I mean, I got to tell you, in some of our schools last year, I'd walk in and it seemed like a very sterile environment. You'd have dividers up in front of kids. I'd walk into an elementary classroom. We have a lot of older buildings, 629 square feet, 25 students with dividers. It just was not normal. You walk in today, that what you see is the difference from a normal environment are masks. That's it.
Yeah,
for the most part.
Okay. What happened with you guys?
So I think, again, none of us, I personally, professionally, wasn't expecting to come back and be hit with this Delta variant. We heard about it, but you really don't know what it's like. As you know, the variant, the virus, we're constantly finding out more information about it. So at the high school, I think, you know, a combination of just not knowing certain kids were positive. We have students that actually take positive, you know, take-home tests and were identified. Couldn't get in touch with some individuals. There was a difference in terms of positive cases that we had identified versus the Department of Health. And again, so we, fortunately, we have systems in place where we can access the Department of Health on a couple hours' notice. We pulled together a team to triage, and the decision we made is that we needed to take a pause to make sure we contact traced, identified all the positive cases, and then we traced all of them to ensure, you know, and we canceled all of our athletic events and the after-school activities for the safety of not only our students, but other opposing teams.
Are you aware of whether the positive cases are sick kids, asymptomatic, you know, mild sniffle? I mean, how?
Everything, all of the above. We have asymptomatic students that may have been tested, or they were a close contact, no symptoms, they get tested, they were positive. Then we have students that have come into school with multiple symptoms. We send them home to get a test, and they're determined positive, but they were back in school during that infectious period.
Okay. So you took a couple-day break. Wednesday was a professional development day. We're taping on Thursday, so guess what? The kids already left because there's no, they give them a box lunch out the door, correct?
Correct.
And that will happen until when?
We're going to just reevaluate it. I don't have a set timeline, but it's not forever. I mean, we want kids back in school. We don't have the luxury to do this in our other schools, so I would say, you know, as a benchmark, probably the end of October, we'll take a look at it, you know, maybe sooner, depending on the numbers.
So what happens to the classwork lost?
So they've reduced, they've minimized, there will be no classwork lost. They've reduced periods during the day by about 10 minutes. So they also have their lunch period. And so in the afternoon, teachers will be working with groups of students virtually to assist them in their work. So it's not a free period or break for the teachers, but it's, we felt that with the lunch, it's the best option right now. And this is something we came up in conjunction with the Department of Health. you know, this was a drastic move right now, but we felt
I don't think it's going to be
necessary.
I think you're going to see a lot of systems are going to end up going to this because, look, I think I got a lot of answers to a lot of things. But the one thing I was wondering about at the beginning of the school year, and I must have said, I don't know 500 times on the radio and here, how do you deal with lunch? And I know that you've spread them out a little bit.
They're not spread out in our school. They're sitting shoulder to shoulder,
okay.
right? So we all agree that, you know, you can wear the mask. You wear the mask in the classroom, wear them in the hallway, and at lunch, you know. And again, it's not realistic that you're going to put your mask down, take a bite, and put it back up, right? So you go in there, and this has been a point of contention and very conflicting for me also. But it's the guidance, it's what we do. You know, we have students in the high school that have a QR code, so we know, take a picture, so we know who's at a table. But is it the best, is it the best, you know?
So you are actually systematized to know who's sitting where. It's not, so one kid can't just decide, I want to go over and talk to my girlfriend because, you know, blah, 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 but that has to happen.
Of course. And that's what we're saying is like we're doing the best that we can. We're trying to ensure that we want to ensure the safety, but when you look at what transpired last week and combined with, you know, this issue of our cafeterias, it seemed like, you know, in the moment, this is the best decision to make.
You're not going to project this in any other system. You're too smart for that, but let me do it. Am I crazy by suggesting that what you've done in Coventry will not be unique?
I don't, you know what, honestly, I don't know. I think that in that short period of time, we've already looked at our systems internally, so I think we have a system in place now to ensure that those cases, the communication with us, you know, our school and Department of Health, we may not be in that situation again. So I don't want to, you know, but for us, where we were at, it seemed like it is a good mitigation strategy in the moment.
All right, a couple of big picture issues when we come back. Stay with us. All right, a couple of things. The Department of Health has set up some systems here for quarantine and this and that. And I'll tell you, I find it to be, you know, the old joke, how many should take to screw in a light bulb? How many educators / health bureaucrats does it take to screw in a light bulb on a couple of things? I'm a little confused between the vaccinated and the unvaccinated, especially when it comes to those 12 and over. So you want 55-45. You have 55% of your kids are vaccinated.
At our high school, that was
Do you have vaccination happening in the school buildings?
Yes. Yes, actually we have next Wednesday, we're going to have a vaccination clinic in our high school.
Not every day?
Not every day.
Not available every day?
No.
Okay. You say like, no, because you don't have the resources and everything else. But, you know, we got $1.1 billion of federal funding sitting, you know, in the bank, in the General Assembly with our, as I said, with our General Assembly doing something other than they should be doing. I don't think that should be dismissive. I think that's something that every school system should have at the ready with permission slip in hand. Let's go take the shot. Number two, this weird thing between the vaccinated and the unvaccinated. So you get a vaccinated kid you think is a close contact, they have one set of rules. You get an unvaccinated kid, got another set of rules, right? Mm-hmm. And they could be gone for, what, 10 days on a quarantine until their PCR testing is through. What is the then education part for the kid that's quarantined for 10 days? You know, the North Smithfield, or the Smithfield superintendent, which one? I'm not sure which, so I apologize because it's not about them. You know, wondered out loud the other day, oh no, sorry, it's a Johnston superintendent who said on the air, you know, I'm actually thinking about reshifting some resources to actually be able to do some distance learning for those kids. And I thought to myself, what? Of course. So what are you doing?
So we're doing what's called concurrent learning. So students can access through Chromebook. They can access the instruction in the classroom.
You mean live?
Live. It's not ideal.
Watch
because,
Mrs. Smith teach the class.
Because
correct?
Best teaching practice isn't a teacher standing in front of the classroom. So it's a challenge. But to me, giving packets to students is it's not an option, right? It's a non-negotiable because I feel that that's when we lose kids immediately. Not everybody has the same resources at home to support them. So, but I say that without struggles. You know, there needs to be the proper technology. You know, we've invested a lot more money in Chromebooks to make sure students have access to that. There is no easy solution. None of us have been through this before. We continuously it's like a quality improvement process. We're constantly going back and reflecting and revising. So there is no perfect
But some
answer.
systems haven't even gotten to that. So credit to you.
Well, our staff.
Well, credit to the system and that you're leading. That you have absolutely identified the common sense stuff. I think, but the DOH is really trying to outdo itself in this particular case. Okay, guess what? If you're in the classroom and you're wearing masks and you're 3 feet apart, you're exempt from having to be a close contact. Of course, you know, we're going to send you over into the cafeteria, and the whole thing, and if you're vaccinated, you get this kind of process. If you're not vaccinated, you get this kind of process. I'm pulling my hair out. Utah saved hundreds of thousands of working hours with a test and stay program. Massachusetts looked at it and said, hey, pretty good. Rhode Island looked at it and said, duh. And now the governor is saying, okay, we're going to sample it and we're going to get going, you know, better late than ever. Am I nuts? Wouldn't you like to have a test and stay program?
Well, in fairness to the Department of Health, I know I reached out to one of the key people that we work with. Her name's Tara Cooper, and said, what about, I live in Mass, they do the test and stay, and she said they were actually, I believe, this week meeting with the CDC to talk about it. They wanted to find out more information.
Well, CDC hasn't put a national thing out, so we can walk and chew gum at the same time, can't we, by ourselves?
Right. I think it makes sense. I think the key is that we have to have the resources to do it. That means students get tested every single day.
5 days.
In Massachusetts, they've hired, I believe they've contracted with an agency that actually comes in and does that.
Correct.
So we need to think it
Well,
through.
if they're symptomatic, they get tested. And if they're negative, they go back to class. If they're positive, they go home. And they get tested for 5 straight days once symptoms, perhaps once a sniffle appears. And the school nurse doesn't get bogged down with it. You're correct. Consultants come in and they run the show.
Right.
The state's paying for it. The districts don't have to do it. It's highly recommended, and they're all falling into line.
And I think that, I hope that Department of Health will support that and that we can do that. Because the reason we have these changes and these different rules, I mean, the goal is, and I believe in the good of human spirit, that we're trying to do what we can do to keep students in school as much as possible. But we are in a public health crisis, and there are people who don't believe that. I truly believe that we are still in a public health crisis.
Practical solutions. Keep up the good stewardship. Let me know when we can have lunch in-house at the cafeteria at Coventry High School.
Hopefully next week.
Craig Levis is the superintendent. Final word when we get back. I've said this many times. I've written about it. Massachusetts isn't perfect, but for some reason they seem to get it right most of the time. And all we have to do sometimes here in Rhode Island is get over our small state complex and just copy and paste. In this case, test and stay. See you this week on the radio. Weekdays 3 to 6 on WPRI. Bye.